let's rebuild Venom in D&D, because I built him before, but there's some minor changes that I think would be great and some suggestions that popped up in the comments. And there's even a note from the original creator of Venom that I wanted to include, because although the original alien suit saga from Spider-Man wasn't developed by Todd McFarlane, the actual character was partially created by him. Todd McFarlane's also known for creating Spawn and a pretty kick-ass toy line, but when he actually saw the Sam Raimi version of Venom that came out in the third Spider-Man movie, he had a major issue with it that I would like to address with this build. Now, starting with the race, I originally chose a Simic hybrid, and that's still a great option, but I'm going to go a different route this time, because there are some key differences between Simic hybrid and what I'm going to go with, which was suggested in the comments of my last video, which is a Dhampir, or Dhampire, or is basically like a knockoff vampire. Because Simic hybrids seem great because they're a merge of two different things, which is exactly what Venom is. And they get a feature called animal enhancements. And that's because you're usually merged with some sort of animal. I grabbed Nimble Climber at level 1 because Venom can basically climb like Spider-Man. However, Nimble Climber only gives you a climbing speed. It doesn't necessarily mean you can do the full-on crawling across ceilings or not having to use your hands or things like that. They get an additional enhancement at level 5, and you can use things like grappling appendages, which I did, or Carapace, which would boost up your armor class by +1. But Dhampir has two alternatives that are pretty spot on that allow us to address different issues for this build. Because instead of just getting a basic climbing speed, Dhampir straight up gives you spider climb. So you have a climbing speed equal to your walking speed, but then at 3rd level, it upgrades so you can straight up walk across vertical surfaces, across ceilings, and not even need to use your hands if you don't want to. So if you want to be standing on the ceiling and attacking something below it, you can do that. And that's going to be especially damaging in part of how this build is going to work. The other thing is that Venom likes to chomp down on things, and my original build was able to do that because I went with a Beast Barbarian. We're not going to go that route this time, and I want to make sure I still get some sort of bite attack, and Dhampirs, which are basically just vampires, have vampiric bite. So their bite attacks count as a simple melee weapon, which they can use their constitution modifier for instead of strength, and it does a d4 of damage plus their constitution modifier. On top of that, if they're chomping down on something that's not a construct or an undead, they get an additional benefit. They can either regain health equal to the damage dealt by the bite, or the amount of damage they deal with the bite can be added to the next attack roll or ability check. They can only do this bite a number of times equal to their proficiency bonus, but it's still kind of a cool ability, and it checks off that need for a bite attack because Venom likes to chomp. Then when it comes to a background, he's a symbiote from outer space that attaches to Eddie Brock. But the symbiote portion is from outer space. So we're going to go with Wild Spacer. This gives us the feat Tough, which gives us an extra 2 hit points of health per level of this overall build. Then as far as the ability scores, we're going to have a bit of a wide spread that looks like this. It's going to make sense a little later. Then when diving into this starting class, because we're actually going to be doing a 3-way multi-class with this build, we're diving into Barbarian. Right when you become a Barbarian, you get access to Rage. And Rage is going to be how we kind of picture you covering yourself in the symbiote. You can activate your Rage as a bonus action. It gives you resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. You get to deal additional Rage damage whenever you're doing any sort of attack with your Strength modifier, whether that's unarmed strikes or with a weapon, but Venom would mostly use unarmed strikes. Being in a Rage also gives you advantage on strength checks and strength saving throws. The only downside is that you can't concentrate on or utilize any spells while you have a Rage active. The other thing you get from first level of Barbarian is unarmored defense. So your armor class equals 10 plus your dexterity modifier plus your constitution modifier. And that's actually going to be the biggest downside of this build, is that our armor class is going to be a little lacking, but we're going to have plenty of ways to negate a decent amount of damage with things like Rage, and also regain health because the symbiote does do some healing to you. And very quickly, I want to make sure we can focus on those unarmed strikes. So we're going to do a quick multi-class into Monk. This will boost up our unarmed strike damage because they get the feature Martial Arts. So now your unarmed strikes are boosted up to a d6 of damage plus your strength or dexterity modifier, but we want to utilize the Rage damage bonus, so we're going to be going with strength still. The damage die does increase if you level up enough in Monk, but we'll worry about that throughout this build. The other benefit of martial arts is that you can always attack as a bonus action for free. The other feature at level 1 of Monk is the unarmored defense, but that means your armor class is equal to 10 plus your dexterity modifier plus your wisdom modifier, and that's lower than the one that we get from being a barbarian, so we're just going to use the barbarian one. Now, we're going to jump back over to barbarian stuff because I want to focus on that first. I just wanted to make sure we didn't neglect our unarmed strikes as early as possible. And I know I'm jumping around back and forth, but if you want character sheets to follow along, they're linked down below. At second level of Barbarian, you get Danger Sense, so you have advantage on dexterity saving throws, which is helpful because the symbiote Venom is able to get a Brock out of some danger whenever it's necessary. Second level of Barbarian also gives you Reckless Attack, so you can get advantage on all of your attacks for the turn, but it does make it so everybody has advantage on attacks against you. But we didn't really care about that anyways because our armor class is gonna suck. Then at third level of Barbarian, we get to choose a Barbarian subclass. And this is where we actually get to utilize a lot of the abilities of Venom, but we're gonna have to reflavor them a tiny bit. Because when I built Venom using the 2014 rules, it was mostly focused around the Beast Barbarian, so I could do more of a bite attack or claw attacks or whatever. But I want to focus on boosting up your health and being able to grab people with your appendages and pull them back towards you. So we're going to be going with the new subclass from 2024, Path of the World Tree. This gives you the feature, Vitality of the Tree. And this activates when you enter a rage. So basically at the same time as you covering yourself in the symbiote, which gives you two features. One is Vitality Surge. So when you activate your rage, you get a number of temporary hit points equal to your level in Barbarian. And the other feature is Life-Giving Force, which is you leaning more into the hero side of the anti-hero idea. So at the start of each of your turns, while your rage is active, you can give somebody within 10 feet of you a number of temporary hit points equal to a number of D6s equal to your rage damage bonus. Basically having your symbiote reach out and block some damage overall. Then at fourth level of Barbarian, we get access to an ability score improvement, so we're going to boost up our strength and constitution by 1 point each. Fifth level of Barbarian gives us extra attack, so we can attack twice per action, and it also gives us fast movement, so our movement speed is boosted by 10 feet. Then sixth level of Barbarian gives us the feature that I really wanted, and it's really you reaching out with the extended arms, or if you're more Spider-Man-esque, it would be webbing, but symbiote doesn't really have webbing. But you get the feature from Path of the World Tree called Branches of the Tree. So whenever a creature you can see starts its turn within 30 feet of you, and your rage is still active, you can use your reaction to summon some spectral branches or reach out the symbiote and force that creature to make a strength saving throw. Otherwise, that creature is pulled towards you and has to be placed within 5 feet of you. And on top of that, after the target teleports, its speed is reduced to 0. And this is especially dangerous with you being a Dhampir because you can walk across some really high ceilings and then reach 30 feet down, grab somebody, pull them up to you, and then just drop them onto the ground, doing some damage. And on top of that, they can't even get up because once you drop them, they're gonna fall prone and their speed is 0, so they're stuck just laying there in pain. But that's the last feature I really cared about from Barbarian. Now let's jump back over to Monk. Second level of Monk gives us Monk's Focus. So you have a number of focus points equal to your level in Monk, and you can spend them on things like Flurry of Blows to get 2 unarmed strikes as a bonus action instead of just 1. You have the feature Patient Defense, so you can disengage as a bonus action, or you can spend 1 focus point to boost that up, giving you the dodge action at the same time. Or then there's Step of the Wind, so you can dash as a bonus action for free, or spend a focus point to dash and disengage as that bonus action, while also doubling your jump distance. Second level of Monk also gives you unarmored movement, so your movement speed is boosted again by another 10 feet, and that does upgrade as you level up in Monk. Also at second level of Monk, you get Uncanny Metabolism. So when you roll initiative, you can regain some of those focus points while at the same time regaining some health, regaining a number of hit points equal to 1 roll of your martial arts die plus your Monk level. But you can only use this feature once per long rest. Third level of Monk gives you Deflect Attacks, so you can reduce any damage coming at you by an amount equal to 1d10 plus your dexterity modifier plus your Monk level. It costs you your reaction, but considering our armor class is going to be pretty low throughout this build, having a boost to resistances with rage and the boost to the temporary hit points from Vitality of the Tree, and now this to reduce any incoming damage, makes it so you're not really missing out on that much just by lacking some armor class. Then third level of monk gives us a monk subclass. And I like the idea that he can reach out and reach further with his symbiote stuff. That's kind of the idea behind this build. So we're going to go way of the astral self. And this gives you the feature arms of the astral self. So as a bonus action, you can spend 1 key point to activate these arms. And you can think of them as extra appendages coming off the symbiote. This has a bunch of random features that we don't care about specifically for this build, but what it does do is increases your reach with unarmed strikes by 5 feet, and it can change your unarmed strike damage type to force. Then at 4th level of monk, you get an ability score improvement, so we're going to boost up our strength by 2 more points. You also get slow fall, so you can reduce your fall damage if you need to. Then 5th level of monk would give us extra attack, but we already got that from being a barbarian, so we don't really have to worry about that one. But it also gives us stunning strike, so you have a chance to stun a creature, and even if they succeed on a saving throw, it still has some other beneficial effects, so it's worth trying whenever possible, like giving advantage on an attack and reducing their speed by half. 6th level of monk gives us empowered strikes, so the damage type of your unarmed strikes can be force or its normal damage whenever you want. You don't always have to have those astral arms active anymore. 6th level of monk gives us visage of the astral self from our subclass. So you get astral sight, so you can see in any sort of darkness, whether it's magical or not. You can have advantage on insight checks or intimidation checks, which intimidation checks are probably going to be the more relevant one here, or word of the spirit, allowing you to talk really softly or really loudly, which is an odd thing to randomly throw in. 7th level of monk gives us evasion, so at most you're going to take half damage from any dex saves, but if you succeed on the dex save, you're going to take 0 damage. 8th level of monk gives us another ability score improvement, and I want to take a feat because I want to focus on wrapping people up in the symbiotic goo. So we're going to take the feat Grappler. Now we already have advantage on any grapple checks because we're going to focus on raging, but this feat amps it up. First, we can boost up 1 ability score, so we're going to boost up our dexterity by +1, which is really just to help our armor class. Then it also gives us 3 different features. The first is punch and grab. So when you hit a creature with an unarmed strike specifically as part of your attack action, you can immediately try to grapple them at the same time. It doesn't require you to give up any of your attacks, it's just automatically paired together. But you can only use this feature once per turn. The second feature is that you have advantage on any creature that is being grappled by you. And then the last feature is called Fast Wrestler, where you can actually move at your normal speed while grappling somebody, because usually you can only move at half speed when you're grappling someone. 9th level of monk gives us acrobatic movement, so you can move across vertical surfaces, but you can already do that thanks to being a Dhampir. But this also allows you to run across liquids, but only during your turn. 10th level of monk gives us heightened focus. So now Flurry of Blows allows us to make 3 unarmed strikes as part of our bonus action. Patient Defense will give us a bunch of temporary hit points, which is just allowing us to have more ways to get temp HP, which is really solid to have considering our low armor class, but we now have so many ways to mitigate damage, it's amazing. And then the last thing that gets upgraded is Step of the Wind, allowing you to bring somebody along for the ride, and if you mix that with your grappler feat, that becomes even a little better, meaning you can dash while holding on to somebody that doesn't really want to be held on to. Then the other feature you get at 10th level of monk is self-restoration. So you can end any charmed, frightened, or poisoned effect on yourself if you need to, and going without food doesn't force you to have exhaustion anymore, even though the symbiote is pretty hungry a lot of the time. But really, I just wanted the heightened focus stuff from being monk. That's the only reason I took it all the way to level 10. Now we're going to do our third multi-class, because I want to address some issues that Todd McFarlane had, and we're going to be diving into fighter. First level of fighter gives us a fighting style. And this is actually a bit hard because most fighting styles require you to wear armor, which we are not wearing armor if you want any sort of defensive fighting style. We're never wielding any weapons, so we can't use dueling, 2-weapon fighting, or even thrown weapons. So really, there's one option which does still somewhat work for Venom. So we're going to take blind fighting, meaning that you have blind sight. And considering the awareness that the symbiote has of pretty much everything around it, as long as there's not too many loud noises, that works pretty well. Then the other feature you get at first level of fighter is Second Wind. We have a decent amount of ways to get temp HP between our barbarian stuff and our monk stuff. We have one way to heal ourselves with being a monk and uncanny metabolism, but we can only do that once per long rest. So we need one more way to heal ourselves. And the best way to do that is with Second Wind. So as a bonus action, you regain a number of hit points equal to 1d10 plus your fighter level. You can actually use this feature twice per long rest, and you can regain 1 use on a short rest. Second level of fighter gives us action surge, so once per short or long rest, we can take 2 actions in a single turn. Also at second level of fighter, we get tactical mind, so you can use one of your second winds to boost up an ability check, but we really want to make sure we use it for our health. Then at third level of fighter, we get a fighter subclass. And the biggest issue that Todd McFarlane had with the third Spider-Man movie was how small the Venom character was. Because the whole idea and what he really liked to focus on about Venom is that he's this big, hulking, terrifying thing. And that just didn't happen in the Sam Raimi movie. So to help address that issue from the creator of the character, I'm going to choose the fighter subclass, Rune Knight. This gives you the feature Rune Carver, so you can activate certain runes on items that you're carrying on yourself. So I went with Frost Rune because that boosts up your intimidation checks, because that really fits with Venom. And if you activate the rune, you can actually get a +2 to all of your strength and constitution checks. And then the other rune I'll grab is Cloud Rune, because I don't know what else to grab, which allows you to invoke the rune. And if you see somebody that's getting hit within 30 feet of you, you can redirect that attack to somebody else. But what I really chose this subclass for is the other feature you get called Giant's Might. So as a bonus action, which I know we're using a lot of bonus action stuff because you're going to use 1 for rage, you're going to use 1 to activate your astral arms, and then on the following turn you probably want to use this Giant's Might. But Giant's Might makes it so when you activate it, if you're smaller than large, you become large, addressing that issue that Todd McFarlane had. You will have advantage on strength checks and strength saving throws, which you already kind of have if you're in rage, but also once on each of your turns, when you hit a creature with a weapon or unarmed strike attack, you can deal an extra 1d6 of damage. I really just wanted this to make sure he was big and intimidating though. Then finally at 4th level fighter, you get 1 last ability score improvement. And since this is max level, we get to choose an epic boon. So I'm going to go with the boon of Fortitude. You need the extra health. You don't have a huge armor class. Your armor class is basically stuck at 15, which is pretty darn low. We get to boost up 1 ability score by 1 point, and the only thing that would get any sort of help from that is our wisdom, so let's throw 1 point into there. But more importantly, this gives fortified health. So your max HP is increased by 40 points. And whenever you regain hit points, you can add your constitution modifier to whatever you regained, but you can only do that once per turn. However, because we have multiple ways to regain health, this is going to be a huge boost, especially all the way at max level. Meaning anytime you use your uncanny metabolism or your second wind, you can add your constitution modifier to that healing. But that's how I would build Venom using the newer stuff from 2024, even though I utilized plenty of the older stuff from 2014. Let me know what you think about this build in the comments down below. And if you made it all the way to the end of this build, let me know by hitting that like button, and I'll be here helping you roll at least 3 nat 20s in your next D&D session.